let's see. Okay, so this tweet comes from a guy named Jason Stanley. And it says, I don't think I don't think whatever residual trauma I have from the Holocaust comes from my genes. I think it comes from my mom saying things to me like, they're always going to want to kill you. And the more successful you are, the more they're going to want to try, when I was like 7. And this began a conversation of generational resentments among minorities. So it began a conversation, a Twitter thread about generational resentment, especially among minorities, and how many minorities may not actually have cause or reason for the angst or hatred, anxiety, whatever they might feel toward either a specific group of people or white people in general, but that a lot of it comes from the generational conversation. And I know that is I feel like that's true in my case. I feel like that's true in many of the people that I talked to. It was true among some of my friends, and just hearing a lot of the stories over and over and over, just being retold about, you need to be careful for this group of people. And I haven't seen it actually put into print, or like, talked about publicly a lot. I've always kind of just thought that, this is just my theory, that we do ourselves a lot of harm, or we do our younger generations, and I'll just speak for, being Black, we can do a lot of generational harm to those coming up behind us when we continue to relive those stories as if they are happening today. So I'm not saying that we need to get rid of history. I'm not saying that we need to skirt truth, or, act like slavery, Jim Crow, like any lynching, that these things didn't happen. No, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we can put things in their proper perspective, though. We can look at, hey, look at this. Yeah, this is history, and, history's rough, and every nation has its history, and this is ours. And, there's that. And we can also talk about the positive shifts that we've made as a country. We can talk about the things that that have worked to benefit, people of color within America. And we can also have a proper perspective of, just because this was my experience doesn't mean that this is going to be your experience. How do we uphold people in the most positive light, especially as Christians? How do I bear with one another? How do I believe the good about someone else, and raise my children to also believe the good about other people? That doesn't mean that I raised my children to be naive. That doesn't mean that I raised my children to just walk around with blinders on and, every person is good. No, like they're going to be good and bad. You're going to find righteous and unrighteous. We find this in scripture. But the idea of generational trauma, I believe, is something that we need to talk more about, especially, and again, I'm just going to talk about, being Black and being raised, like for my first 15 years in inner city. What is it like for us as adults to rethink the way that we communicate with younger generations? What does it mean to reframe the conversation so that it's not just all white people are racist, all white people are bad? You're going to have to watch out for every white person, just because you never know which one is going to be the one who wants to do you in.
Which may have been true 60 years ago.
It may have been true 60 years ago. I'm not saying that at one point in history it wasn't true, but even at that point, how do I raise my children to understand that you're not what somebody may think you are? You are who you are as defined by God. And how do you walk in wisdom, but also walk in confidence, also walk knowing that you walk with the Lord? And what does that mean? Like, what does it mean to live out, or to live from a scriptural perspective, not always just going around, judging or condemning someone before you even meet them, judging and condemning them just based on the color of their skin, because that's what was happening to Black people. So the conversation of generational trauma is just something that, I think we need to really investigate a little bit more, and not just as Black people. I would say, if whatever your ethnic background is, what is the way that you are talking to the generations under you? Or perhaps you may be a man who had a bad experience with a woman. Now all women are bad. Well, no, how do you have other conversations with younger generations? Maybe you're a woman who had a bad experience with a man. Now all men are bad. No. We need to be holding these things in their proper perspective so that those coming up behind us also can hold people in their proper perspective. That is my thought on that. But I think that if we were to have better conversations or different conversations in regards to people, people in general, like, not all people are bad, not everyone is going to be racist. Racism doesn't exist everywhere. I think that would give younger people other data in how they interact with people. Gosh, I was going to say something else and I completely lost my train of thought. But I think that the conversation of mistrust or distrust often stems from the fact that from very early on, we can be taught, well, you never trust these people, or, you never trust a police officer. You never trust a cop. So because a cop will shoot you, a cop will always be, your worst enemy. They're always looking to target you. Well, that isn't actually true. So how do we reframe this conversation so that we can have better dialogue between groups?